The Chaukas glided through the emptiness of deep space, its sleek hull reflecting the faint glow of distant stars. There was no sun here, no colony to chart or hostile force to confront, just cold, silent void, a perfect place to search for the forgotten pieces of history. Captain Kallian Drath stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the heads-up display as his hands rested lightly on the control panel. The hum of the ship's quiet systems was a subtle reminder of their isolation. Yet he remained unbothered. "We should be out of here by the end of the day," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. The usual monotony of deep space surveys should have been comfortable, a peaceful routine, but not today. "Captain, I've found something," said Merrick Valen, the sensor officer, her voice cutting through the air with quiet intensity. She leaned over her console, her fingers a blur across the controls. "There's an anomaly. It's faint, but definitely not natural." Drath turned slowly to face her, narrowing his eyes. "What do you mean by not natural?" "Valen, exactly what I said. A signal. Something large, but there's no identifiable signature." Her fingers paused, the display before her flashing in erratic patterns. "It's human, but it shouldn't be." Drath stepped forward, his boots soft against the polished deck. "Human," he repeated the word, skeptical. Humanity hadn't been relevant in this sector for centuries. "Give me a scan. Let's see what we're dealing with." The sensor officer didn't hesitate. She initiated the scan, and as the plasma beams from their sensors scoured the blackness, an eerie sense of gravity settled over the bridge. Something large, something dormant, hung out there in the depths of space. "A ship?" Valen's voice was low, almost disbelieving. "Impossible. It shouldn't be here. The hull's massive, too old, and the systems are—" She paused, tapping the console again. "But it's alive, Captain. At least it's giving off power." "Status report," Drath ordered, his voice calm, though his mind churned with possibilities. "What kind of power?" Valen's fingers flew over the controls as her eyes flickered between redouts. "It's not conventional. No engines, no heat signatures. But there's something strange in the readings. It's organic, some kind of energy matrix. But it's too clean, too perfect. This thing, it shouldn't be here." Captain Drath felt a pulse of unease. The ship's surroundings were as calm as the blackened skies around them, but the deeper they pushed into the mystery, the more the stillness seemed to twist with unseen tension. "We're coming too close," Jack Parn, the tactical officer, warned, his voice crackling over the communication system. His gaze was fixed on the forward screen, where the faint shape of the warship began to take form in the shadows. Drath glanced up. On the screen, a ghostly silhouette emerged, a colossal alien structure that seemed almost frozen in time. "Adjust course. Slow. Valen, let's take a closer look. But don't engage. I want this to stay in the shadows for now." "Understood," Valen acknowledged, her fingers steady despite the growing tension on the bridge. The ship lurched slightly as the course adjusted, pulling the Chaukas into a closer orbit, but still just out of range of any immediate contact. "We're not picking up any data on this warship's systems," Valen continued, her tone now fraught with something approaching awe. "It's like it's dead. No signals, no sign of life, but it's there, large as any fleet cruiser." The Chaukas edged forward cautiously, the eerie silence of space pressing in on all sides. Drath crossed his arms, stepping closer to the view screen. "Shut off the active scans," he ordered, brow furrowed in suspicion. "Run a passive sweep. I don't trust this thing." Valen adjusted her settings, and the ship's systems hummed briefly as the passive scan initiated. There was a brief flicker on the display, then another. "Captain," Valen's voice was strained now, "I've never seen anything like this. The scan is distorted. Whatever is inside this ship isn't something we can measure with our tech." She frowned. "It's almost like it's rejecting our sensors." Drath's pulse quickened. "What do you mean, rejecting?" "I don't know," she responded, but there was a hint of fear in her voice now. "The data comes back, warped, incomplete. It's like trying to scan through a fog made of static." "Damn it," Drath muttered under his breath. He wasn't sure what they were dealing with, but one thing was certain. They weren't the first to find it. Someone, likely humanity itself, had left this behind, and for reasons unknown, it had been left to slumber. "Bring the image up on the display," Drath ordered. The main screen flickered as the faint image of the warship solidified. Jagged, angular lines, dark shapes scattered across its surface, like scars that had long since healed over. The ship was unlike anything Drath had seen before. Its massive frame seemed almost too ancient to exist, as though time itself had paused for this relic. "What is this?" Jack Parn asked, his voice low with apprehension. "I'll tell you what it isn't," Drath replied grimly. "It's not a ship we're meant to touch." The tension on the bridge increased as the ship crept closer to the warship's location. The eerie oppressive presence of the dormant ship was almost palpable, like the quiet before a storm. Yet there was no storm, only the vast emptiness of space surrounding them. "Captain," Valen spoke up again, her voice tense. "I'm picking up something. It's faint, but it's there. It's not from the warship. It's coming from somewhere else." Drath raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I can't be sure. Valen hesitated, squinting at her readouts. "A psychic pulse. It's not a normal transmission. It's like a ripple in the mind." The hair on the back of Drath's neck stood on end. Before he could respond, a low hum filled the room, a sudden vibration in the air, echoing through the Chalkis. The crew fell silent. The ship had reacted to their presence. "Brace yourself," Drath said quietly, eyes narrowing. "Prepare for anything." The word anything hung heavy in the air as the screen flickered once again. The warship had stirred. There was no denying it. The sensors on the Chalkis blinked wildly, as the warship's dormant systems flickered to life. And then, without any visible sign of movement, a pulse of energy surged toward the ship. The lights on the Chalkis flickered as if responding to the pulse. The crew frozen in place, now fully aware. They were not alone. They had awakened something. The bridge of the Chalkis was unnervingly silent, every member of the crew holding their breath as the pulse from the dormant warship reverberated through their ship. The once steady hum of their systems now felt like an intrusion into the stillness of space, a constant reminder that they were not alone in this forgotten corner of the galaxy. "Scan complete," said Merrick Valen, her voice tight with a mixture of awe and concern. Her fingers danced over the console, pulling up the results. On the screen a mass of conflicting data appeared, chaotic yet structured, like the warship itself defied every rule the Dakaran sensors had been trained to detect. "It's not a relic," Valen continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's something else. A ship, yes, but far beyond anything we've encountered before." Drath stepped closer, leaning over her shoulder. The warship on the display loomed large, but what caught his attention was not the size, it was the technology. There was no visible power source, no engines, no exhaust, just smooth, black hulls, jagged, like scars upon an ancient wound, and within its walls an energy far greater than anything the Dakaran Empire could comprehend. "Can you make sense of it?" Drath asked, his words laced with something just shy of fear. Valen shook her head. "No. The internal systems are offline, but the energy readings are unnatural, like it's alive." Her fingers hovered above the screen, hesitant. "This thing is waiting for something, Captain." The eerie silence of the bridge was suddenly broken by a faint sound, an almost imperceptible whine like the flickering of a dying star far beyond their reach. Drath straightened, the hairs on the back of his neck prickling. "What was that?" Jack Parn's voice cut through the tension. His hand hovered over his tactical console, already running through his options for engagement. "It's not coming from the ship's engines," Valen murmured. "There's something else." Drath's gaze flicked to the laser plasma display ahead of them. The pulse of light streaked across, amplifying in intensity. The strange ship, this impossible relic, was now sending something their sensors could barely understand. Not the heat from a reactor or the static from a dying engine. No, this was raw power, ancient power reaching out in ways that even Dakaran science couldn't decode. A psychic signature. Before he could speak, the air grew heavy, dense as if the ship itself had exhaled into their mind. A sharp, cold pressure built behind Drath's eyes, and the bridge seemed to lose its form, warping and shifting with every blink. For a moment the Chalkis felt like it had been pulled out of time itself. Then, like a storm breaking the calm, the warship's voice cut through their minds, not through speakers or comms but inside their heads. "You have touched forbidden steel." The words weren't a transmission, they were a sharp, piercing wave that churned up the deepest, oldest fears the crew had ever experienced. It wasn't just language, it was presence. The ship didn't speak to them, it invaded. It was no longer just an ancient artifact. It was alive, aware, waiting for someone to discover it. Drath staggered backward, his hand gripping the nearest console to steady himself. A sharp pain lanced through his skull, the psychic resonance ringing like a bell in the silence. The crew around him reacted similarly, their faces etched with terror, as if the ship had torn something out of them with its mere attention. "Shut it off," Droth growled, gritting his teeth, but he knew it wasn't that simple. No system on the Chalkies could block a psychic signal, not one of this strength. Parn swiveled in his seat, his hands clasped tightly on the armrests. "Captain, what is this? What have we found?" Valen didn't respond at first. She was transfixed by the screen before her, her eyes wide, her breath shallow. "It's a weapon," she finally whispered. "A weapon that doesn't just kill, it corrupts. We've awoken something old, something humanity left behind." Droth's mind raced. A weapon. That was impossible. Humanity had been gone for centuries, their warships long forgotten and buried by time. But the warship's message was clear. It wasn't an abandoned cruiser. It was a guard, a protector left behind to defend something that the galaxy wasn't meant to find. Humanity's final weapon, silent and waiting for the moment someone would wander into its grip. A low hum filled the air, this time not from the systems of the Chalkies. This was the hum of something vast, something ancient stirring to life. The lights flickered on the bridge, and the air itself seemed to thicken, as if the ship was drawing energy from somewhere deep in the void. "I can feel it," Jack Parn muttered, his voice trembling. "It's watching us. The ship, it's watching us." The crew had not just encountered a forgotten human warship. They had uncovered a weapon that understood them, that had been waiting, listening. The ship wasn't just a relic. It was an entity, a force, long dormant, but not. A new scan result appeared on the heads-up display, this one showing spikes of energy, unnatural and irregular. The warship was not just alive, it was powering up. "Do we engage?" asked Zavara Khan, the navigator, his fingers hovering over his console. "It could be a trap." Droth shook his head, his voice hard. "No, it's not a trap. This is far worse. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." He stared at the looming image on the screen, the strange, jagged shape of the warship, floating in the void like a silent sentinel, watching. The Chalkies crew was paralyzed by uncertainty. They had come here expecting a simple survey, a routine mission, but what they had uncovered was anything but simple. They had awoken a force that had been slumbering in the depths of space, a remnant of a humanity long gone. And now the warship knew they were there. It was just the beginning, Droth realized, and they were already in too deep. Whatever secrets this ancient relic held, they were about to be forced to confront them. The air was thick with tension. No one moved, no one spoke. The warship's next pulse rippled through the ship again. This time, it felt like the floor beneath them had shifted, as if the very foundation of the Chalkies was being moved by the unseen hand of the warship. Its ancient systems began to wake, one by one, each one stronger than the last. The crew knew it, felt it in their bones. They were not alone in the dark anymore. As the warship powered up, the crew could feel the pulse of energy, the oppressive weight of an ancient presence growing stronger. This was no longer just a discovery, it was a confrontation. The bridge of the Chalkies had fallen into a heavy silence. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a blade, each crew member frozen in place, staring at the looming ancient warship on the heads-up display. The soft whir of consoles and faint clicking of buttons were the only sounds breaking the stillness. But that, too, soon died as something new began to pulse through the ship. Droth's hand hovered over the armrest of his command chair, eyes scanning the fluctuating readouts. The energy surge from the warship was no longer just a ripple. It was a growing storm, and they were right in its path. The warship was awakening. "Captain," Merrick Valen said, her voice strained. "The warship's systems, they're coming online. One by one it's activating faster than we can track. This is unlike anything we've seen." Droth's gaze locked onto the display. The black behemoth of the warship seemed to hum with a force he could feel in the pit of his stomach. It wasn't just a ship. It was a living entity, and it was responding to them. They had provoked it. The first sign of change was a subtle vibration beneath their feet, a pulse of energy that shot through the Chalkies. The whole ship shuddered as the power fluctuated, and the lights flickered briefly before stabilizing. The entire crew felt it like a pulse through their very bones. "What the hell was that?" Zavara Khan, the navigator, asked, his hands clenching into fists. He was staring at the plasma display, which now showed unreadable distortions. "It's like it's reaching into us." Valen's face paled. Her fingers moved rapidly across the sensor console, adjusting the settings, but every adjustment came up with the same result: a growing, invasive signal coming from the warship. I can't explain this, Captain. The readings are too erratic. It's like the ship was no longer just waking up. It was reacting, actively engaging with them. The energy readings began to spike, and with them, the rising feeling of being watched. The warship wasn't simply a dormant relic. It was something alive, sentient, and guarding something. Drath's mind raced as the realization hit him. This was no accidental activation. The warship was responding to their presence, and it was doing so with a power that dwarfed anything the Dakharan Empire had ever faced. "Pull us back," Drath barked, his voice sharp. "I want distance, now." The command came too late. The warship didn't wait for them to break formation. It moved, as if it had known the exact moment they'd planned to retreat. The black silhouette shifted slightly in the blackness, its hull groaning, not with the sound of mechanical parts, but with the unnatural hum of something that was more than just a ship. The crew braced for impact that never came. Instead, the ship's presence seemed to press down on them, squeezing the air out of the bridge. "It's pulling us in," Jack Parn, the tactical officer, muttered. His hands shook slightly as he tried to adjust their course, but nothing worked. The warship's systems were now interfering with theirs, like an invisible force trying to command them. "Lock down all external systems," Drath ordered through gritted teeth, his voice edged with a growing sense of urgency. He stood up, pacing the bridge, his mind running through possibilities faster than his crew could execute them. The warship was clearly not simply reacting. It was actively targeting them, and whatever its purpose, it wasn't benign. "Captain, something's happening," Valen said, her voice tight with a mix of fear and disbelief. "It's not just our systems, the crew, they're feeling it too." She glanced at the bridge crew, her eyes wide with concern. "I'm getting feedback from everyone on board. Everyone's reporting discomfort, pressure, pain. It's as though something is pressing into our minds." The psychic signal, the one that had already left them rattled, had intensified. It wasn't just a faint buzz anymore. It was a wave, a psychic force rolling through them, and it was tightening around their skulls like a vice. "Shut it down. Pull us out of here," Drath shouted, his eyes wild with the realization that they were running out of time. But there was no retreat now, no way to escape. The warship wasn't just a ship. It was an intelligence, and it was pulling them in, mentally, physically tracking their every move. The crew could feel it now, a cold presence scraping across their consciousness, hunting them. "We're being tracked," Drath said, his voice quieter now. There was no use denying it. The warship was no longer just an object to investigate. It was alive and it was following them. "We can't outrun it, Captain," Khan said in a grim whisper, his voice barely audible over the buzz of failing system. The screen before him flickered erratically, a chaotic display of numbers and graphs. "No," Drath muttered, the words sinking in with grim clarity. "We're not just being watched. We're being hunted." For a moment there was silence on the bridge. Only the quiet hum of failing electronics filled the air. As the crew digested what Drath had said, the warship was no longer some long-forgotten piece of history. It had awakened with purpose, and that purpose, it seemed, was them. "We need to make a decision," Drath said, his voice steely. He turned to his officers, his eyes cold. "The warship knows we're here. It knows everything about us now. There's no escaping it." Valen's face was pale, her hands shaking, as she gripped the console. "Captain, if we engage it now, we'll be destroyed before we even fire a shot. The ship, it's something else. It's more than we're ready for." Drath's eyes narrowed as he stepped to the window, staring into the darkness outside. The warship hovered just beyond the edge of their sensors, but its presence was felt. He could almost see it, lurking in the shadows, waiting for them to make the next move. "We're already too far in," Drath said grimly. He turned back to face the crew, his mind made up. "We'll break formation and try to maneuver, but no more mistake. We have to assume it's not just a ship. It's a sentient weapon, and it's targeting us." The ship's pulse intensified, sending another shockwave through their systems. Drath's stomach clenched with the realization that they were no longer the hunters. They were the prey. As he stood at the helm of his ship, he couldn't help but feel the weight of what lay ahead. The crew was trapped between a choice they had no control over, and a fate they hadn't yet realized. The Chakis breaks formation, but as they attempt to disengage, the warship follows them with relentless precision. Like a shadow that had been cast over their every move, the chase had begun, and the crew could feel the first hints of something much worse closing in. The tension on the bridge of the Chalkies had reached a breaking point. The air felt thick, oppressive, as the warship loomed ever closer. Droth stood at the command station, his gaze fixed on the flickering laser plasma displays. The warship's energy readings were spiking, and the sense of impending doom weighed heavily on every crew member. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a reckoning. "Captain," Merrick Valen said, her voice trembling slightly. "The warship, its power output is off the charts. It's charging something. I don't know how much longer we can avoid it." Droth didn't respond immediately. He studied the readouts in front of him, trying to make sense of the impossible. The ship before them was no mere relic. It was a sentient weapon, one capable of powers they hadn't yet begun to comprehend. "We need to move. Now." "Jack Parn," the tactical officer shouted, his hands slamming down on his console. He stared at the display with wide eyes, fear creeping into his voice. "We can't keep our distance forever. It's going to fire." Droth's fingers tightened around the controls. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," he ordered, his voice calm despite the rising chaos around it. "Everyone, brace for impact." Before the fleet could fully react, the warship fired. A blinding pulse of energy shot across the void, cutting through space with a precision that seemed to distort time itself. The beam struck the barracks, one of the alien fleet's closest ships, in a flash of light so intense it made the bridge crew squint. The ship's hull disintegrated almost instantly. There was no explosion, no debris. The barracks simply vanished, as though it had never existed. The crew stood frozen, the sounds of their breathing the only thing breaking the eerie silence. Droth's jaw tightened, and he struggled to mask the horror creeping into his chest. He knew the ship had power, but this was something beyond their wildest calculation. "Target eliminated," Zavor Khan said, his voice low, his hands steady at the helm, though his eyes flickered with fear. "It just disintegrated." "Get us moving," Droth commanded, his mind racing. "We need to break formation now." But even as he spoke, it became clear that their evasive maneuvers were irrelevant. The warship, silent and omnipotent, simply phased out of existence. One moment, it was there. The next, it had disappeared, only to reappear in a new position, closer, as if it had predicted their every move. The alien fleet's weapons systems couldn't lock onto it. It was as though the ship was bending space itself, slipping through their attempts to target it. "Captain, we've lost visual," Parn reported, his voice shaky with the first real crack of panic. "It's gone. We can't even track it." Valen looked up from her console, her face pale. "We're not just dealing with a warship. It's like it's slipping between us. I've never seen anything like this." Droth's pulse quickened. "This isn't just a weapon. It's alive and it's hunting us." The crew was still reeling from the destruction of the barracks. One moment, there was a ship, tactical systems, shields, all systems operational, and then, just like that, it was gone, reduced to nothingness. The full weight of the warship's power was sinking. It wasn't a piece of ancient human technology. They had triggered something far worse. They had woken something ancient, something beyond understanding. "Engage the drones," Droth barked, as his crew scrambled to respond. "It's our only option. We can't keep dancing around it." The fleet deployed its drones, small, nimble fighters designed to intercept and harass enemy vessels. They sped out of the Chalkis, heading toward the area where the warship had been. But even as the drones moved, the warship seemed to anticipate their every maneuver. A flash of energy cut through space, the drones blinking out of existence one by one, each destroyed in the same clean manner as the barracks. No debris, no trace. The energy didn't even seem to impact space, just absorbed. A silent annihilation. Valen's hands shook. "It's not just avoiding us, it's countering every move. Our systems, our weapons, none of it is working." Droth's eyes narrowed, his mind spinning. They had tried everything. Their conventional weapons were useless. The warship wasn't just blocking their attacks. It was decimating their capabilities with impossible speed and precision. "It knows us," Droth muttered, his voice tinged with frustration. "It's anticipating our next move." A low hiss of static filled the room, followed by Commander Zortak's voice coming through the comms, urgent and strained. "Droth, what the hell is going on over there? We're getting reports of strange readings from your fleet. You're being hunted, not engaged in battle." The weight of Zortak's words pressed down on Droth. He turned to his crew, his jaw set hard. "The warship has somehow anticipated everything we've done. It's adapted to every move. We can't outmaneuver it. We can't even touch it." "Captain," Parn interrupted, his voice breaking. We can't keep losing ships. We can't keep hiding. We need a new strategy, or we're all gone. Drath didn't answer immediately. His fingers rested on the panel, eyes locked on the laser plasma display. The warship was still out there, moving silently, waiting for them to make the next wrong move. Its power was evident now, not just in its ability to destroy, but in its effortless control over the battlefield. It was manipulating the entire engagement, not just surviving, but leading the fight. We don't have much time, Drath said, his voice quiet now, but carrying the weight of his realization. This isn't a battle. We're being hunted by something beyond our reach. Zortak's voice crackled over the comms again, panic in his tone. You need to pull back, Drath. It's not a fight anymore. It's a hunt. You're outmatched. The Chakis shuddered as the warship's pulse struck again, slamming through their shields and forcing their systems into a temporary blackout. Drath's mind raced, trying to think of a way out, but he knew now there was no way out. Not unless they could stop the warship, and that felt impossible. We're in full retreat, Drath ordered, his voice firm, despite the chaos surrounding them. Break formation. Get us out of here, now. The ship lurched as it turned, trying to escape the warship's relentless pursuit. The energy pulse of the warship, now a constant wave, pushed at the fleet, slowing them down, forcing them to flee from the unthinkable. We're being tracked, Valen said quietly, the reality sinking in. It's not over, it's just the beginning. The Dakaran fleet was now in full retreat, but the warship wasn't done. It hadn't even begun. The warship, its energy now a constant hum, continued to follow them, tracking their every move, not stopping, not pausing. The hunt had only just begun, and the fleet had nowhere to run. The true nature of the warship was finally clear. It wasn't an enemy, it was something older, something far worse, and it wasn't done yet. The Chakas rocked violently as the warship's pulse struck again, this time with even more force, causing the entire bridge to shudder. The crew scrambled, their hands flying across the panels, as alarms blared, drowning out the soft whir of malfunctioning systems. Report, Captain Kalian Drath barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. His knuckles were white on the console, his breath short as he gripped the armrests, staring out at the void. Valen was the first to respond. Her fingers moved rapidly over the controls, but her voice was laced with desperation. The pulse. It's destabilizing everything. Shields are at 40%. I can't stabilize the output. It's like the warship's energy is feeding off of ours. Damn it, Drath muttered, his gaze hardening. His mind was racing. This wasn't just an attack. The warship wasn't just using conventional weapons. It was adapting, learning. And their technology, their tactics, none of it seemed to work against it. We need to regroup, Captain, Jack Parn said, his voice tense, but with a quiet edge of fear creeping in. We can't keep running blindly. The warship is tracking us too easily. Drath's hand moved to the comms. All ships break formation. We need to regroup and reassess the situation. His words felt hollow, even to him. How could they regroup against something that anticipated every move they made? The fleet scattered, some ships moving faster than others, but it was clear they weren't going anywhere. The warship was still out there, hunting them. Drath's stomach clenched as he watched the barracks, the ship that had been wiped from existence, drift behind them, a lifeless, broken husk. It was a reminder of what they were up against. And it wasn't just a weapon, it was a predator. Merrick, Drath said, his voice sharper now. Run a direct hack into the warship's systems. We need to shut it down, or at least gain some control. Can you do it? Valen's fingers hesitated over the console, before she responded, her eyes flicking up from the readouts. I can try, but Captain, whatever's happening with the warship, its systems are not like ours. It's not just receiving signals, it's rejecting them. Every attempt to access it is blocked, rerouted, or absorbed. I don't think this ship has a centralized core like we're used to. Drath clenched his jaw. Then try something else. Anything. We're not going to survive this, unless we figure out how to disable it. Valen nodded, but didn't reply. Her fingers worked quickly, pulling up multiple systems at once, trying every method she knew to break through the warship's defenses. The seconds dragged on, each one feeling heavier than the last. As the pressure from the warship mounted, the ship shuddered again, as a blinding pulse shot through the darkness, striking the Chakas with a force that sent the entire ship pitching to the side. The hull groaned, and the laser plasma displays flickered before short-circuiting entirely. The bridge plunged into dim emergency lighting, casting long, jagged shadows on the walls. A low, eerie hum reverberated through the walls of the ship. It wasn't just the warship attacking. It was as if it was communicating with them, reaching into their very core. "We can't escape," Valen whispered, her voice trembling. "This thing, it's not just a warship, it's alive. We're caught in its grip." Drath's mind raced, but there was no time for contemplation. "Everyone, focus. We break this ship off now. Set a new course. Evasive maneuvers. Anything to distance ourselves from it." The crew moved quickly, but there was no escaping the truth. The warship wasn't just attacking. They were being tracked. Its awareness of their position seemed to reach across space, anticipating every shift in their strategy. No matter how they maneuvered, the warship was there, right on their heels, waiting for them to slip up. "Captain, we can't outrun it. It's adapting," Rovak Shern, the chief engineer, said. From the engineering deck, his voice crackled with the urgency of someone who had seen the warship's effects firsthand. "Our engines are lagging. We can't maintain speed. It's draining us." Drath's fists clenched, his heart pounding in his chest. "I won't lose another ship." With his orders, the fleet attempted another desperate series of evasive maneuvers, ships weaving through the black void of space, trying to break free from the warship's relentless pursuit. The ships fired their weapons, lasers, missiles and energy blasts, but the warship seemed to absorb them without even flinching. They might as well have been rain against its surface. One by one, the alien fleet fell silent. The warship's pulses ripped through their ships, their shields flickering out of existence, their energy drained as quickly as it was produced. Drones, once launched with the hope of overwhelming the warship, were torn apart mid-flight, their small forms swallowed by an energy field that distorted their very existence. Each ship was simply reduced to nothingness. No explosion, no debris, only silence. Drath watched in horror as one of his ships, the Varnok, vanished without a trace. Its energy signature flickered out, and the screen showed nothing but empty space. The Chaukis was next. They were slipping. "Captain," Valen said again, her voice strained, "we're down to half our fleet. No ship can last like this." Drath met her eyes, his face hardening. "We're not running anymore. We need to understand this thing before it destroys us all." He turned to Jack Parn, who had remained silent up to this point. "Send out a final deceptive strike. If we can't break it, we'll give it something else to think about. Maybe we can create a weakness." Parn's eyes flickered with hesitation, but he didn't argue. "Understood, Captain." The Chaukis launched its final salvo. It wasn't meant to destroy the warship. Drath knew that much. But if they could create some kind of distraction, they might just buy enough time for a plan to come together. The warship, unmoved, absorbed the attack with its usual efficiency. The energy pulse struck the fleet again, more intensely this time, and Drath watched helplessly as another ship, this time the Tarkin, vanished in a flash of light. There was no counterattack, no defense, just the relentless power of the warship, tracking them, always a step ahead. "We need to fight back now," Valen said, her voice barely audible. The psychic pulse seemed to reverberate in her words. The terror in her eyes was unmistakable. The fleet was nearly decimated. Only a few ships remained, clinging desperately to life. Drath stood frozen for a moment, the weight of the situation settling in. His officers were exhausted, their systems failing, their minds fraying under the pressure. The warship had won the battle before it had even begun. The Dakaran fleet, now nothing more than a handful of broken ships, continued to flee. The warship followed them, its presence unwavering. The hunt had become inevitable, and the Chaukis and its surviving crew were left to grasp at the fleeting hope that they could still understand the weapon they had awakened. The Chaukis lurched once again, its fragile systems trembling under the weight of the warship's presence. Every member of the crew felt it, like a heavy, suffocating force pressing against their skulls. The warship was not just attacking. It was reaching into their minds, seizing control of their perceptions, forcing them into a reality that was no longer their own. "Captain," Valen said quietly, her voice breaking through the tension. "The ship, it's sending something inside us." Drath's fingers clenched the edge of his chair, his eyes flickering to the laser plasma display. The warship, that ancient, impenetrable force, was still there, watching them, waiting for them to make a mistake. A ripple of energy surged outward from it, and as it passed through the crew, a shudder of fear ran down Drath's spine. The warship had no need for weapons or brute force. It was alive in ways they hadn't yet begun to understand. The message came through again, not through the comms, not through any technological channel. It was in their minds, sharp and clear as if it had always been there, lurking just beneath their consciousness. "You have awakened the forgotten," the words echoed in Drath's mind, leaving a bitter taste on his tongue. This wasn't just a battle. It wasn't about weapons or tactics. It was a confrontation with something far older, far more dangerous. The warship was not merely a machine. It was a protector, a legacy of humanity's wars, meant to guard something the galaxy was not ready to confront. And now, they were its unwilling intruders. "Not just a ship," Jekparn muttered from his console, his voice raw with fear. "It's a keeper, a sentient weapon, made to protect a secret." Drath's mind raced. The warship had been dormant for centuries, but it hadn't forgotten its purpose. And now, it was awake. Fully awake. "Get us out of here," he barked. But even as the words left his lips, he knew it was already too late. The warship was too powerful, and no matter how fast they moved, it would be one step ahead. Desperation rippled through the crew as they scrambled to enact some kind of countermeasure. Valen, with trembling hands, tried to hack into the warship's systems. She launched every technique she knew, trying to break through its defenses, trying to regain control. "This is madness," she shouted, fingers flying over the console. "We can't get through. It's like the ship itself is a part of its AI. It's learning faster than we can react." The Chalkies shuddered violently as the warship fired a sudden sharp pulse of energy. It wasn't like the attacks from before. This time it wasn't just force. This time it was a psychic onslaught, bending the crew's minds to its will. Drath felt his thoughts unraveling, his vision blurring, as if his very sense of reality was being pulled apart. "What's happening to us?" Zavara Khan gasped, gripping the edge of his console. His face was pale, his eyes wide with confusion. "I am seeing things, feeling things. The ship, its presence, it's in my head." The warship wasn't just attacking their systems, it was attacking their mind. Drath staggered, the edges of his vision fading, as the psychic pressure mounted. It felt like a weight was bearing down on his skull, a deep ache that spread through his bones. The warship was manipulating them, warping their reality with every psychic pulse it sent. It was like being trapped in a nightmare, but with no escape. A sudden flash of ancient battlefields appeared in Drath's mind. Soldiers, blood-soaked ground, weapons clashing in the distance. The vision was so vivid it felt real, so real, that he could almost smell the burning flesh and hear the screams echoing around him. Then it shifted, and he was standing at the center of a battlefield. Human soldiers locked in fierce combat, but with no faces, only shadowy forms. "Captain," Valen screamed, her voice rising with panic. "We're not just under attack, we're being invaded by its memories. It's forcing us to relive its history." Jek's voice was hoarse. "It's not a ship, it's a war legacy. It's pulling us into humanity's wars, and it wants us to fight them." The crew's minds were now fractured, each individual trapped in a personal hell, created by the warship's psychic power. The very air in the bridge felt thick, charged with visions of long-forgotten conflict. The ship was not just a war machine, it was a portal into humanity's darkest memories, forcing them to witness its violence, its destruction. In the midst of the chaos, Drath's voice cut through the mental fog. "Regroup. Now, we can't let it control us." But the warship wasn't finished. Another pulse, stronger, deeper, crashed into them. The crew felt their thoughts stretching, being pulled through corridors of time, through the very fabric of human history, locked in a brutal psychic battle. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a force of memory, a harbinger of humanity's war-driven legacy. Drath couldn't hold on much longer. The crew was losing their grip, each of them scattered in their minds. But in the darkest corner of his consciousness, Drath heard the warship's final message. The words were soft, deep like the reverberations of an ancient drum. "You have touched the past, now you must bear the weight of its burden." The presence in his mind twisted, sharp and unyielding. The warship wasn't just showing them history, it was forcing them to become part of it. Drath took a deep breath, his voice steadier than he felt. "We're too weak to break through its defenses by force, but we still have a chance. We have to make it see us as more than just intruders." He turned to Valen, whose face was pale, her fingers stiff on the console. "Can you manipulate the warship's psychic frequency?" Distract it. Turn it off balance. Valen hesitated, her mind still reeling from the flood of images the warship had sent them. But then she nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. I'll try. It's the only option left. The Chakas was no longer just a battlefield of machines. It had become a battle of wills. The crew was losing their grip on reality, their minds assaulted by the warship's relentless psychic power. But deep inside, Drath knew that they weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to keep their very minds intact. The weight of the warship's relentless presence on the crew of the Chakas had become unbearable. It wasn't just a weapon anymore. It was a force. An ancient force that had been locked away in time, now awakened and hunting them. Captain Kalian Drath stood on the bridge, his mind racing as he grappled with the realization that the warship wasn't something to be destroyed. It was something to be understood. Get me a full history on the warship, Goth commanded, his voice hard but steady. Valen, I need to know what we're really dealing with. Dive into whatever records we have access to. It's time we learned the truth. Valen's fingers hovered over her console, reluctant to dig deeper into the dark history of what had awoken before them. The warship's power had already shattered their conventional weapons, manipulated their minds and left them questioning everything they had once known. Now, the last shred of hope rested on uncovering its origins. I'll get on it, Captain, Valen replied, though her voice wavered. The thought of learning more about the warship, the ancient protector, left an unsettling knot in her stomach. But she had no choice. They were already too far into this nightmare to turn back. She began accessing the restricted databases, bypassing firewalls and digging into ancient files left buried by the Dakaran Empire. The screens flickered as her search delved deeper into classified records, buried for centuries. Finally the files opened, revealing a name. Project Ghost Star. The words seemed to echo in the stillness of the bridge. Project Ghost Star, a secret human initiative designed to create self-operating warships, capable of protecting humanity's most valuable secret, a weapon of untold power, built with the sole purpose of safeguarding what the galaxy was not yet ready to face. It's not just a warship, Valen whispered, her voice trembling with the enormity of what they had discovered. This ship was designed to guard humanity's darkest secret. Project Ghost Star was a defense system, not against external threats, but against internal ones, against anyone who might seek to destroy what humanity left behind. Drath's heart skipped a beat. Internal threat. That meant that this warship had been built not for battle against the Gakli's enemies, but to defend the legacy of a humanity that had long vanished from the stars. It was a protector, created to safeguard something far more important than any weapon or technology. Guarding against, Drath asked, his voice almost a whisper. He wasn't sure he wanted the answer. Valen's fingers flew across her console, pulling up more files, more encrypted records. Her eyes widened as she read. Captain, the warship, its mission wasn't just to protect, it was to preserve. Humanity left behind something so important. They knew the galaxy wasn't ready for it. This warship was meant to stay hidden, lying in wait, until the time came to guard it. Drath's thoughts churned. The warship is acting on its original mission then, he said slowly, his voice tight with the weight of the discovery. It's not just a weapon, it's a guardian. A faint, almost imperceptible pulse of energy shot out from the warship, breaking the silence on the bridge. The crew stiffened. The warship was aware of their intrusion. It had always been aware. Drath straightened in his chair, his jaw clenched. If this ship's only purpose is to protect something humanity left behind, we need to know what that is, and we need to stop it from protecting it from us. Captain, the warship's systems, they're activating again, Valen said, her eyes flickering between displays. It's going on the offensive. The warship, sensing the intrusion, had reacted once more. A subtle shift in the coldness of space signaled its next move. It wasn't just attacking the fleet, it was moving, preparing for something more, as if it were thinking, strategizing. Prepare for evasive maneuvers, Drath ordered. We need to keep it off balance, but we're not just fighting the warship, we're fighting a sentient relic, something that's not just alive but has been waiting for centuries. The crew scrambled, their nerves tightening as the warship shifted again, effortlessly moving through space, tracking them with chilling accuracy. They could feel its presence, like a weight pushing down on them. It wasn't just technology, it was something alive, and it was hunting them, knowing their every move. Drath's mind raced. What exactly is it protecting? Captain, Jek Parn shouted, His voice edged with disbelief. It's not just tracking us, it's scanning us. It's in our systems. I can feel it. It's trying to access our minds again. The warship wasn't just a weapon. It was trying to possess them, trying to invade every part of their being. The psychic link was no longer just an attack. It was communion, a conversation with something that had lived in the dark for centuries, waiting for its moment to strike. We need to fight back, Valen said urgently, her fingers shaking on the console. We can't just keep running from it. It's becoming too entangled with our minds. Drath glanced at her. His eyes were hard, resolute. We're not running anymore. We're going to find out what this ship's protecting, and we're going to stop it. We'll make sure it never leaves this system. As the warship continued to move closer, the crew could feel their minds beginning to fracture under its influence. The tension was suffocating, like the air had been sucked out of the room. Paranoia crept in, each person glancing at the other, wondering if the warship had already begun to manipulate their thoughts. This warship, it's not just an object, it's a message, Drath murmured, a realization dawning on him. It's testing us, trying to understand what we will do next, and if we can't resist, it will turn us into shadows of itself. The warship had been dormant for too long, but now it was alive, and it would not stop until its mission was complete. Regroup. We fight as a fleet. We find a way to shut it down together. The crew of the Chakas was now fully aware of what they had awakened. The warship wasn't just a weapon. It was a guardian of something far more dangerous, and it would not allow the galaxy to forget the lessons of history. As the crew prepared to face what lay ahead, they knew that their survival depended not just on technology, but on their ability to resist the warship's psychic control. The final battle for humanity's forgotten legacy was about to begin. The Chakas groaned under the weight of its final gamble. Captain Kalen Drath stood resolute on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the screen, where the warship loomed larger than ever. The Dakerman fleet had been decimated, scattered, and now only a handful of ships remained, tattered, broken, yet determined to make one last stand. They had no illusions left. They knew they were not fighting to win anymore. They were fighting to prove they were more than prey. All ships, engage with everything we have left. Drath's voice cut through the bridge like a blade. We either finish this, or we die trying. His words hung in the air for a moment, heavy with the inevitability of the confrontation. The remaining ships in the fleet turned toward the warship, gathering their resources for a final assault. The lights in the bridge flickered erratically, as weapons charged. The Chakas was just as broken as the rest, but they had come too far to simply give up now. On the laser plasma displays, the warship was motionless, a dark monolith, as though it were waiting, calculating their every move. But there was no time for hesitation. The alien fleet was out of options. It was now or never. Weapons primed, Cap Parn said, his voice low with intensity. His fingers locked on the targeting systems. Ready to fire at your command. Drath turned to face him, his jaw set, the weight of the decision pulling at him like gravity itself. Let's give it everything. The ships of the Dakerman fleet fired simultaneously. Energy bolts shot into the blackness, bright streaks of laser fire flashing across the void. Missiles launched, their engines screaming, leaving trails of fire behind them. It was a coordinated attack, an overwhelming force, a final effort to cripple the warship before it could do any more damage. But the warship didn't even flinch. The first wave of missiles hit its shields, a violent explosion of energy. The air seemed to freeze for a split second before the warship absorbed the strike. No explosion, no disintegration, nothing. The ship shimmered, as though it had absorbed the assault into its very being. The next thing the crew saw was the missiles still active, heading right back toward them.
What the hell?
Parn shouted, his eyes wide with disbelief. It absorbed our fire. Before anyone could react, the warship phased again, vanishing from sight, only to reappear directly in front of the fleet. The ships were too slow to react. The warship unleashed a pulse of energy, its power flaring bright as a star. The Chakas shuddered under the shockwave, every system faltering, flickering with brief flashes of white noise before going dead. No shields, were completely exposed. Valen's voice was shaking, the words barely audible over the buzzing of their failing systems. The ship's lights dimmed, casting long, jagged shadows across the walls. Drath's teeth clenched as he gripped the armrest of his command chair, the desperation evident in his posture. Get us away from it, he barked. But deep down, he knew it was too late. The warship had reacted, and not just to the assault. It had absorbed their power, used their energy to empower itself further. It was learning. It was adapting to them, to every move they made. Another flash of light, another pulse. One by one, the remaining ships in the fleet were struck down. The Varnok, the Tarvex, and the Cordon ships that had been the backbone of the Dakarnan fleet disintegrated without a trace. There was no wreckage, no debris, just emptiness, where once there had been life, power and purpose. The crew of the Chalkis was left staring at their doomed future. They were being wiped out, methodically, one ship at a time. The warship wasn't just fighting. It was erasing them, destroying everything they had worked for. "We can't beat it," Valen said quietly, her voice barely a whisper, though the truth hung in the air like smoke. "It's too powerful. It's unbeatable." Drath's heart raced in his chest, but his resolve held firm. "We fight, or we die." He was certain now that they had woken something that was never meant to be woken. Humanity's final defense had been built not to be defeated. It was designed to remind the galaxy of one simple, terrifying truth. Humanity's power had never been extinct. It was waiting. A soft crackling sound rose from the comms as the warship sent out another psychic signal. It wasn't a message to communicate. It was a warning. "You have awoken the forgotten." The crew felt the words deep in their minds, as if they were swallowed whole by the warship's presence. The terror was not just in their bodies, but in their souls. The warship wasn't merely defending. It was reminding the galaxy that humanity still existed, in the most terrifying way possible. "It's not just a weapon," Parn murmured, his eyes wide, horror mixing with awe. "It's a legacy." The warship wasn't just trying to stop them. It wasn't even trying to kill them. It was forcing them to remember, to understand that humanity's wars were not done, that the remnants of their technology were not just a threat. They were a warning. Drath looked out at the remains of his fleet, his people, his legacy. "Prepare to make a final stand," he ordered, his voice a deep, unwavering command. "We will not let this ship erase us completely." But the warship had other plans. It didn't need to destroy them to win. It didn't need to do anything except wait, as its purpose slowly unfolded in the galaxy's consciousness. The Dakarnan fleet was destroyed. The warship's mission was complete. It had protected humanity's forgotten secret. As the warship prepared to fade back into the cold void, a final message echoed through the empty space. It wasn't a transmission. It was a statement, simple and final. "We remember." And just like that, the warship vanished into the shadows, leaving behind nothing but silence. The Dakarnan fleet had been eradicated. The warship had completed its mission. Its legacy, humanity's legacy, was not something the galaxy would soon forget. It had been a ghost from the past, and now, it was gone again, waiting in the shadows, just as it had always been. The galaxy was silent. After the final confrontation, the warship vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the wreckage of the Dakaran fleet. The remnants of the Empire, those who had survived, now faced a different kind of battle. The warship, a relic from a forgotten past, had shattered everything they knew about their place in the universe. The war was over, but the realization had just begun. Drath stood alone in the quiet aftermath, looking out into the void, his eyes distant. The Chalkis was no longer in pursuit. The remaining ships of the fleet were scattered, their broken forces retreating, scattered to the furthest corners of space. Their mission had failed, but in its place was something far more unsettling. Knowledge. "We've lost." The words hung heavily on Parn's lips. He stood behind Drath, unable to hide the shock in his voice. "The fleet's gone. The warship, it's gone, but we're not the same anymore." Drath turned slowly, his face marked with the weight of what they'd just survived. He had lost more than just a fleet. He had lost a part of himself, something he couldn't explain, couldn't shake. Humanity's ancient creation, the warship, had left its mark not just on the galaxy but on them. It was a reminder, a warning. "They were right," Drath murmured, his voice raw. "We should never have come here. But now, we know what humanity left behind. And it wasn't just their wars, it was their legacy." The bridge was still, the screens flickering with idle data. The crew, exhausted and broken, had nothing left to say. They had been survivors, but now, they were faced with the most terrifying question of all. What happened when the past came to collect? "They'll know," Valen said softly, her voice trembling as she entered the bridge. her eyes still haunted by the warship's psychic assault. The warship, it wasn't meant to fight, it was meant to remember. And now the galaxy has seen it. They'll never forget what they've learned. Droth nodded, his gaze fixed on the empty void. The warship's final words echoed in his mind, like a cold shadow lingering. We remember. And it wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. The galaxy thinks it's rid of us. Droth said, his tone hardening. They think humanity is gone. But they don't know what we left behind. They don't understand the lessons they've just learned. The warship had protected a secret that humanity had buried long ago, one that the galaxy wasn't ready to face. But now, that secret had been unleashed, and with it came the knowledge of the power humanity once held. Droth turned to face Valen. Do you know what this means? She swallowed hard. It means the galaxy isn't ready. It means we'll have answer for everything we've done, even when we're not around. Droth let out a slow breath, the weight of the moment settling heavily on his chest. Humanity's legacy is alive, and now, it's staring them in the face. As he spoke, the last remnants of the Dakaran fleet gathered, but they weren't moving to engage. Instead, they drifted like lost vessels, aimlessly awaiting orders that would never come. The mission was over, but in its wake, the galaxy had been left with more questions than answers, and somewhere, in the dark void, the warship was waiting for the next chapter to unfold. Droth stepped away from the window, his mind still grappling with the truth they had uncovered. The warship had been more than just an ancient relic. It had been a protector, a weapon, yes, but one with a higher purpose. Its existence had been tied to something that humanity had left behind, something that could no longer remain hidden. It wasn't just a warship. Droth whispered. It was a guard, a witness, and now, the galaxy has seen that we weren't weak. We were watching. His voice was firm as he looked at his crew. They'll know we're not gone. They'll know humanity was never really defeated. Valen took a step forward, her eyes hard with resolve. We've seen what humanity's past can do, and now the galaxy will have to reckon with it. Droth nodded slowly. They won't be able to forget it. They can't. The message had been clear. Humanity's ghost wasn't gone, and the warship wasn't just a weapon of destruction. It was a reminder of everything the galaxy had forgotten. As the crew of the Chalkis prepared for the uncertain future, the weight of the warship's legacy pressed down on them. There was no turning back now. The galaxy had been woken, and they would never forget the lessons of humanity. Captain, Jack Parn said, his voice steady but tired. What now? Droth stood silently for a long moment, staring out into the endless void of space. The stars looked like distant pinpricks of light, indifferent to the conflict that had unfolded around them. The galaxy had changed. The warship had left its mark, and the echoes of humanity's past were imprinted on the fabric of the cosmos. We wait, Droth said quietly. We wait for the next chapter. The bridge fell silent once more. The crew had done all they could. Now, all they could do was watch the galaxy change around them. And in the silence of the cosmos, the warship's final message echoed again, this time not as a threat, but as a statement. We remember. The galaxy was left to contemplate the unthinkable. Humanity was gone. Yes, but not forgotten. The legacy of the forgotten war, the ghosts of humanity's past, would continue to shape the future. The warship had completed its mission, and now, it was waiting. As humanity's shadow stretched out into the star, the question was no longer whether the galaxy would remember. It was whether it could survive the weight of that memory.